17 still.
Yep.
Good to see you, Zach.
That was a good zinger. Oh, good thing that. Hopefully, that didn't make the show. We'll find out.
We'll see. We'll see.
It's always, the words before the words. I got to be professional on here.
That's right. This is a professional podcast.
Yeah, it's not like I have a half-naked man behind me with his arms crossed, wearing a Speedo.
Right.
I think some people are offended by that.
I don't know. Well, you receive a lot of compliments on that poster.
Yeah.
Do you think people are like,
wow. Do what?
That's on them. I was just wondering, like, if they don't say anything, do we assume that they're offended, or do they just not notice? I assume that they did not notice.
Yeah,
I think you should add a second one. Is that new? Below the Rock, is that new?
It's been in a different spot. It's RFK Stadium. On its side. It was my grandfather's, and that was the one thing I got from him when he passed. 20 years ago, something like that. It's not the easiest thing to hang, but it does have like a hole in it, so I guess I could just put a screw through that. Yeah. So what do you think about the robots? Where are you on the robots today? It's November 14th, 2024.
What robots are we talking?
The artificial intelligent robots, the ones that are taking over the world, the AIs. The robots. Still love them?
No. Dude, I'm good with it, man. I mean, it's
How many robots do you use a day?
Well, we have Susie. Susie's our like iRobot vacuum cleaner thing. Susie Suckface that goes around to clean up the floors.
Is that what you named it?
Susie for short. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it a Roomba?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But now
how does that get upstairs? You just
well, that's me. We need a robot for the upstairs because right now I serve as that robot. But yeah, that's I guess autopilot while driving. I mean, it's just that's probably.
What about for business? What's the tool you use for this?
Podcast.ai.
Yeah. And then, do you use any writing things?
Yeah, brainstorming stuff using Grammarly is something that that we have I have running. From a brainstorming standpoint, I think everybody uses ChatGPT. Superhuman, big fan of Superhuman, and that does the auto summarize. So if you get if you get a super long email, it'll auto summarize up at the top, so you don't have to.
So is that like the new Apple intelligent stuff that they're talking about? But they've been doing it before.
So Apple did start doing that with iOS 18.1. They have the auto summarize.
Oh, it's not the phone; it's the software. So I can use it on a different phone. Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, you can use it on your iPad or your Mac.
What software is it going to be on? 18?
18.1.
Let's see where I am.
And I think that they're releasing more. I think 18.2 is coming out here in a couple of weeks, and I think they're going to introduce more.
Oh, guess what? I'm not up to date, so we're upgrading tonight, baby. Let's see the robots. You know me, I'm a little skeptical. A little suspect on the robots. I'm a little worried that Will Smith told us way too much, and that they're going to take over just like an iRobot. He saved us once. I don't know that he's
another. I have not seen that either. So maybe I need to watch that. I don't know.
I've talked about. You haven't watched iRobot? Have you, Stu? Have you watched iRobot?
Many moons ago. I have not watched her though, which is the other zeitgeist.
Doesn't he get in love with the robot? That's like a virtual thing.
Exactly. Basically falls in love with Siri, and it's some cult classic in the AI world, and I've just never watched it. So I feel like, a fraud or something. I must go.
You are a fraud, Stu. You can't call yourself.
Finally revealed in the first minute.
Robot fraudster.
That's right.
Tim, you guys know each other?
No, first time.
Wow, back
First
to
time
back
meetings, yeah.
episodes with this. This is crazy. So
Yeah,
Stu from Virginia Beach, I believe, or at least lived there for a little bit.
Yep.
Met Emmanuel on a rooftop in New York City, I believe, at something.
Correct.
What was the genesis of that? Why were you guys both on a rooftop in New York? And is that like a normal thing up there or what?
No, well, it's maybe normal for a lot of people, but not normal for me as a founder where, being hunched over my laptop for 12 hours a day is more of my social life. But it was extremely chance encounter. My co-founder and I at Type were at some tech event in our neighborhood at top of some hotel. I think we were literally going to the elevator to leave, and Emmanuel was also doing the same. And we struck up a conversation, probably talked for all of 60 seconds. My co-founder kept in touch and did a lunch with him. Was like, hey, this kid's really interesting. You should connect. And we both connected the dots. We were from Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, Norfolk, and just stayed in touch. So I think if I were to bet on an up and comer who's going to do really interesting things over the next few decades, he's on my short list of
he gave Emmanuel a long time to figure it out. He didn't say a couple years, he said a couple decades. So Emmanuel, who I know is listening.
No,
Emmanuel, 30 years, bro.
Compounding. Totally.
He wouldn't be working with us otherwise. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Emmanuel's been on my watch list for quite some time, so it was nice to add him to the team.
Also, the deepest voice in Hampton Roads. He has the voice of God.
He does need a radio gig. I think he would really do well.
He introduced
succeed Morgan Freeman.
Absolutely.
He introduced Allison the comedian Moore at the Virginia Startup World
Regional,
Cup.
Yeah.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah.
And so how many of those have you guys hosted?
That was our first one.
Okay, cool.
So I guess breaking.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, breaking info. We were invited to host year number 2.
Awesome.
I guess, so we put a lot into that. And
do they go to the same city more than once?
I don't know, but I guess what they do is they will look at all the partners that they have, and then they will internally make the decision if they want to renew a partnership for the following year. And so we elevated.
Did they see all the applications or just the 10?
They get all, they see all the applications. So I guess from a programming standpoint, we exceeded expectations, and then from a quality of company standpoint, we exceeded all. I mean, so I'm not sure if you know, Stu, but IV Watch, they placed 3rd overall for the whole World Cup. So right here out of Newport News.
Wow.
So, but from a quality of company standpoint, we showed up.
They lost to a robot, didn't they? I bet they did.
Yeah, I can't. Dude, he was. I don't know what he does, but it is some sort of, but he's like an American Ninja Warrior type of. You have to check out his profile. The guy that won.
That's awesome. But you guys had interviewed the IV founder.
After post competition.
Okay. Yeah, and he had a background. He had sold a couple of other companies. I'm trying to.
Symantec?
Yeah. So he sold
Symantec.
Symantec. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good guy. Always appreciated him and what he did. So, okay, let's get some backstory. So, Virginia Beach, born and raised?
Born and raised, a slight intermission when I was very, very young down to Atlanta for a few years, but middle school, high school in Virginia Beach, born in Virginia Beach. So
college,
grew up surfing up and down the East Coast, went to University of Virginia. So Virginia boy for sure.
And then how old are you?
33. So I've been all over since then, since UVA, from DC to Seattle for a stint, to Denver. But now I've drifted back east to New York. So
jobs in those cities or like starting companies?
Mostly starting companies in Denver and in Seattle. So it's kind of been really since college, I've been doing startups as a founder. So Type is could call it my third on this journey, maybe 3.5. I can share all the stories, but yeah, it's mostly been a career in startups.
Nothing like a 0.5 in there.
I know. A 0.5 that I should have made a 4. Like I should have stuck with it, but helped get something off the ground that's since been pretty successful.
Where did you first dip your toe in the water in the startup world?
Well, honestly, really, I guess I've never thought of this as a startup because it was more like a summer project, but really my first entrepreneurial thing that kind of worked was actually, I think it started during my first year of college, my first maybe summer back from UVA in Virginia Beach, where we designed a t-shirt. It was a very simple t-shirt, Virginia Beach. It was called the VB t-shirt, and it had a Virginia Beach kind of little icon we created on the front. King Neptune, like drinking a beer and surfing on the back. And growing up in Virginia Beach, as you all know from Hampton Roads, like if you live there, you think you live in a really cool beach town. There's like a surf culture. You spend a bunch of time on the beach. It's like you kind of think you live in California in some sense. But the reality is it's a tourist destination for, half of the Midwest to come hang out at, affordable motels and get drunk for, 7 days out of the year. And there's this very tacky kind of like tourist industry where, not tacky, I mean, it's great for the economy, but like all of the swag, if you will, that represents Virginia Beach are these super cheesy touristy t-shirts that have
we got rid of the no swearing signs. Those are gone now.
All right. Good. All right. I'll let it loose then. Oh, wait. I want to go get one as a memorabilia then. Shit. That's right. Those are iconic.
Yeah. I think that they do. Well, that used to be one of the t-shirts too, I guess. That was always interesting to me. All the no swearing signs along.
You live in a military town. Do you not think that sailors?
Literally, SEAL Team 6 is like 10 minutes up the road. You don't think they're, cursing? That's hilarious. Oh my God, I missed those signs.
Hey man, you got to get your Dippin' Dots. And they don't want people cussing while getting their Dippin' Dots.
Totally, nothing ruins your vacation like an F-bomb in the Dippin' Dots line.
Why didn't Dippin' Dots ever make it to stores? Like, because that ice cream of the future is so much better than normal ice cream.
Okay, this might be hearsay or something, but I think I heard that Dippin' Dots either sold or they make their real money, I think, licensing their like freezer technology to some like biomedical company, or I think they the Dippin' Dots. I'm going to totally screw this up. We'll do a fact check later, but like their freezer technology, I think, is used to like transport human organs or something crazy.
Well, that would make sense because the gas stays super cold, right?
Exactly.
And that's
so they've actually
the ice cream is it's colder, and that's why it's the little balls.
Exactly. I think they've actually like pioneered like some sort of like freezing technology, and I think that might be like where they secretly make most of their money. It's like not really the ice cream, but someone I hope will fact check that. But I think I read that somewhere.
It's being done.
Emmanuel will check it.
I could see it in his face.
Yes. Yeah, feverishly typing. What was the t-shirt business? How did that was that a success, or that just?
Yes, it was an extremely, moderate success financially, modest financial success, but a success in that it was the first thing I ever did that had kind of like market pull. And so you can see where I was going with that tourist. Oh wait, this is hilarious. We've got the live fact check here. Okay, pharmaceuticals and blood plasma. All right, directionally correct. So I grew up with this notion that, hey, my hometown is like really awesome and cool, but all of there's nothing to wear basically that like represents where I'm from in a way that feels like I feel about the place as a local, if that makes any sense at all. So a buddy of mine and I set out and we just designed this very simple, but like it just had some iconography and landmarks that only a local maybe would know and appreciate. The old four-story light tower was the tall part of the B in our VB icon. King Neptune drinking some natty lights and surfing, like just these little silly things that I think if you're a local,
it could have been an Orange Crush.
There were like 17 different designs of exactly but the no cursing sign probably should have been in there now that I'm looking back. But I was like, how do I feel about this place and why isn't that represented in a shirt? So I just made this shirt. I think I threw it up on Facebook or something, just like, hey, I might do a run of this t-shirt design. What do you think? And it really did have this just like fun, runaway, viral, very local pull. We're just a bunch of people were like, fuck yeah. And it was really fun because it was like everyone from, 17-year-olds to like 65-year-old men who were like,
because the shirts that are always in these cities are terrible.
They're so sterile.
It's so bad. There's
still a thirst for that today. I'm sure that
there's a thirst. I think they're like, they feel obligated to buy something. It's like the best of the worst. I mean, it is terrible. Have you heard of VBVA? They tried running a design of like branding the area VBVA, and they had like shirts and hats. Tim, you remember Nate Scholl from Swim Nerd?
Yeah.
His brother-in-law created them. I have a shirt. Well, I used to have a shirt. I still have a hat. It's kind of the same concept. It's like, put something around that I think can be better than what is out there now. Because I mean, what out there now is like just garbage.
Yeah. It's not creative.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Tim said. Like you go, like just imagine visiting a place. Like when I travel, I often do want to bring home some little memorabilia. Like I would love to do that, but you almost always end up in some gift shop in the hotel lobby that's just everything's so damn cheesy. And it looks like it was all made by the same, like you're going to go to the Dominican Republic and those gift shop things will look exactly like the crap in San Diego or something. And it's like, is there one company making all this cheesy stuff that doesn't at all really feel native to the place, And that was the genesis.
He probably puts the normal on there and it's like, had fun in, and then we're gonna do the line of we're gonna do the line of
sure. I mean, it's just
Miami. That's what I would do.
That is a business operating at scale. Exactly.
Absolutely.
And it just strips the life out of it. So this was my act of rebellion with a friend. Like, let's just make the shirt that feels more like us, more like the place, really. And it just, I don't know. Maybe we sold like 1,500 or something, like all in, break even because we like bought a screen printing machine. We were physically making these shirts ourselves. So I think we only made money once we actually sold the equipment like years later, and like that was our margin. But it was just really fun to see something resonate. I think I've always seen entrepreneurship and like building startups partly as a way to just like connect with people, or at least like connect with a need that you feel like you have, and then see it reflected back to you and others. And so that was just this super fun microcosm like experiment that I think just once you've gotten kind of a taste of it, how the hell can you go get a job? Basically, it's hard to.
Have you ever had a job?
I had a job for 10 months after UVA, but I was the whole time working on a startup on the side.
When you were in Denver, was MassRoots around then?
Correct. That was MassRoots.
They're back. They're from here too, right?
Indeed. Yeah. I was a co-founder.
You were?
Yeah. I was co-founder and CTO of MassRoots.
Of MassRoots?
Really?
Of MassRoots. Yep. That was, that was the first startup. That was the startup that I was working on the side.
Wait, so Isaac?
Yes. Yep.
Obviously. Interesting. Okay, so when I started Hatch, we invested in RoboCent, which Isaac and
oh my god,
I can't remember his other
Travis,
and then was it Travis?
I think it was Travis. Yeah,
something like that. And I remember like one day the bank calls me and she's like, I'm not supposed to ask you this, but I need to ask you this. Because apparently like $750,000 just showed up in the bank and they're like, this is weird. So she goes, is MassRoots associated with marijuana or something like that? And I was like, I don't know. Because I think at the time I can't remember if I knew that yet or not, but when I believe this is how the story went. When MassRoots got started, Isaac said, hey, can we turn our investment off of RoboCent and put it into MassRoots? And I said, okay, well, I got to ask, the group of investors if they're okay with it. And I think they said no. Well, I know they said no. They were like, no, we're not interested because of what it was. Weed at that point was like, oh, you can't do that. Now you just walk down any street in Norfolk and it just smells like it.
Because that was a super hard pivot once Colorado legalized, right?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. So that's crazy. Okay, so you guys IPO'd. I remember. Okay, wow, this is crazy.
No, and that's so funny. Hatch. I remember Hatch. I remember hearing of Hatch and That's so funny. The dots are all now connecting.
The Dippin' Dots.
The Dippin' Dots, if you will.
Wow.
That's crazy. Small world.
Because I only know one company in Denver, and that was them. So the craziness that
it was pretty nuts because obviously Colorado.
Isaac, right, Tim?
What's that, Zach?
You knew Isaac and all that, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
What's great, yeah, it was, I think Washington State and Colorado, I guess it was 2012, both had passed legal recreational. I'm kind of forgetting, honestly, the details, but it was funny because Denver is not a big startup hub, but there definitely are some companies there. And I think that industry was, of course, the big, fast-growing industry in Colorado. So it was fun to be like a small startup at the time, but with, but still be the hot show in town, if you will. We were able to recruit some really great people. I was on the engineering team and focused on that. And like it, maybe something I learned there that I've definitely taken with me in the AI world is like, life is a lot easier. Startups are always quite hard, but they are easier when you're riding a wave bigger than your company, when you're riding a trend or a shift.
Get some tailwinds.
Exactly. Tailwinds are just deceptively important in ways that I still kind of forget. But like rising tides truly do lift, most boats. So that was like, wild few years.
Is that company done?
Yeah, I think because I'd left quite a while ago. So I think they've since merged into another company, and I don't really kind of know the latest and greatest, but I get the sense it's evolved into something else. So
yeah, I think that timing is everything, and I think they were just a little bit ahead of their time. Like the concept makes sense. A social platform where you want to go, where you want to talk about marijuana, and your grandmother doesn't see it. I mean, it just
that was the pitch.
Literally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Did you make any money on that?
No, there was an exit, so it was like it wasn't a zero, but there's a reason I'm still working, Well, let's be real. I don't think the personality of anyone who does a startup and succeeds is one that then stops doing things if they're successful. But no, there was an exit. But let's just say my yacht, they won't accept my order yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you were at UVA, were you at the business school or were you focused on the tech side?
No, I kind of made I made a late pivot. I mean, the honest answer is like when I got to UVA, you get to college, you're like 18 years old. And at least for me, I absolutely had not thought about like how to best use that time. So the honest answer, I picked my majors, which were econ and religious studies. Because it was like my first year. And there was like actually this guy from Virginia Beach who I thought was incredibly cool. And he is. And he was like my hero almost. And he told me, I'm pretty sure we were like smoking weed or something. Like he was like high when he said this. He's like, you should double major and you got to pick something that like is right-brained and like left-brained. And so he's like, that's why I picked like economics and religious studies, even though I'm not religious at all. And I was literally like, I have my major done. I'm going to do what this high guy just told me to do. And I literally picked econ and religious studies. And then like a year later, I was like, what the hell am I doing? I should be doing computer science. That's obviously the move, but it was kind of too late to make that pivot. So I actually audited a bunch of a few computer science courses and like watched every YouTube tutorial on earth to teach myself programming because I knew when I left UVA, I was like, I know that I want to do a company. I want to do a startup. Increasingly, my ideas were drifting from, t-shirts to software, but actually it's even crazier. I saved up $1,000 or something from the t-shirt business. And I actually hired a random person on the internet to like build an app idea I had. And they ripped me off and like never shipped it. And like basically got scammed out of my life savings halfway through University of Virginia. And I was like, screw it, man. I just need to like teach myself how to do this. And so that was kind of like my very late pivot at.
Is it easy to learn how to code from YouTube?
Shockingly so. You don't. The trade-off is basically like if you're not careful, which I wasn't. What's hard is learning the really deeper principles of computer science.
I think that you can learn enough for an MVP, and then
exactly. That's
then
it.
once you get the MVP, you raise some money and then get someone to do the real code.
Exactly. That was 1,000% how I approached it. and what ended up happening, basically. So you can become a pretty good like hacker, like self-taught hacker. But once you've got something that's got some life in it, you want, quote unquote, real engineers building a thing to scale and that sort of thing. So I do think you can learn a shocking amount. It just, there are trade-offs.
Okay, so you're doing Type.ai now. Is that an easy domain to get?
Absolutely not. Well, easy if you have the money, I suppose. But that's therein lies the hard part. We bought it kind of before ChatGPT launched, which I think really was a before and after moment for AI. Like, I thought it was pretty obvious AI was like about to be a pretty big thing. We started Type, a few maybe months before like ChatGPT launched. And but really everything changed when that product launched. Just so many more people were looking at language models and like what OpenAI was doing. And like my barber is like, I use AI to do this stuff now. And I'm like, okay, now we've reached a critical mass, but now people are talking about this.
Wait. I'm getting my haircut tomorrow. What is my barber going to do with the robots?
Yeah. It's crazy. My barber, I think he told me he uses like ChatGPT to like more or less draft. No, two things. On Google Maps, Google Locations, you can post updates as a business. Like, we're doing a big sale or whatever. Or like, we just had this client who was really happy.
So that copy for
I think he just ChatGPT's that. Yeah, like writes updates with ChatGPT. I think he might also just straight up like write draft reviews that he then asks customers to post. Because I've read a few of the reviews.
I appreciate the hustle.
He's a very early adopter.
Interesting.
But when he told me this shit, I was like, okay, we're no longer early. We're still early, but like people know about this now.
Is ChatGPT still like the highest ever funded? Wasn't it something crazy recently?
Well, they just raised, a lot.
And maybe not the highest.
What did they raise? Yeah,
billions, right?
But they're burning. They're burning
with engineers.
Of money.
Is that what all the money's going? What's all the money going
I think that a lot of it's going to compute right now. I mean, it's just.
Okay.
The power needed to power the H100s or whatever, man. It's crazy amounts of power that is needed.
100%. Yeah, they raised I think an additional like $7 billion, which I think is like the largest venture round ever raised or something. But ChatGPT itself, I think, is the fastest growing consumer product, both by usage and almost certainly by revenue. It's pretty wild. You can look at like the chart of like, weekly active users, WhatsApp, Instagram, ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is just vertical. I mean, it's astounding.
It's also funny when you look at that chart, like how much that drops off during summer vacation when the kids aren't using it for school.
I read again somewhere, Manuel can fact check me here, that like the lion's share of ChatGPT usage is by students.
Which is smart. I mean, like, we have to teach these kids how to prompt engineer. I mean, it's just like, it's not a matter of like your job. You're not going to lose your jobs to AI. You're going to lose your jobs to someone using AI.
Yes.
I mean, so it's just like, we've got to teach our kids how to do this.
I totally agree. It's almost like, you grew up being told you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket out there in the real world. So like, learn all these things yourself. Yeah, total BS. I think it's more important you learn how to use the calculator, when to use it.
Which we never did, by the way. You got the $150 calculator, the TI-83 or whatever the hell it is. That thing.
Kind of a racket.
It is intimidating.
Totally.
Okay, so what is Type.ai?
So Type is a writing product, is the simple way of describing it. Kind of looks like maybe a hybrid between a Google Docs, it's a very familiar document editor interface, and a ChatGPT, where you have like some AI writing and editing capabilities. But the basic idea is like, I a few years ago had started to write a blog, now a Substack, purely for fun, where every weekend, every Sunday for I think like 3 or 4 years straight, I published a newsletter and I wrote what was on my mind that week. And it was purely a creative outlet and purely for fun. And in that process, I came to really appreciate like how damn hard it is to write something interesting consistently, how tough it is to like find the words to express yourself clearly, how hard it is to just like think clearly. And I tried all these different like software products at the time that claimed to help with some of these issues, like tools for better knowledge management, things like Roam Research and even Notion. And like no software to date has ever helped with what's actually hard about writing. It always helps with the more trivial things like organizing your research, formatting your writing, like whatever. The really hard part about writing is like thinking is hard and having a mastery of language is hard. And like you only have, it's a super cognitively taxing act, and you only have so much like juice in the tank, if you will, every day. So anyways, fast forward to like 2020, the first iteration of GPT-3, which is only available via OpenAI's like API, comes out. I hear about it through the grapevine. I cold email Greg Brockman, the co-founder of OpenAI, and like follow up a couple times asking for early access. He eventually benevolently grants that. And I like start to poke around with the earliest GPT-3, what were called completion models in the OpenAI playground, and was freaking blown away. I mean, it was just way beyond what I thought these language models could do. It required if you had a basic understanding of how it worked, you could actually get it to do a lot. It behaved differently than ChatGPT, but if you just learned some techniques, it could really do stuff that was just astounding. And I was like, holy shit, we basically now have technology that, whether or not it's actually thinking is besides the point. It can basically mimic cognition. It has a basic mastery of language. It understands human language pretty well. And I was like, this is the software that's actually going to help with writing, obviously. But of course, like any good insight moment, I did absolutely nothing with that insight for like 12 months. And I was like, what shape is this thing going to take? Like, you know, it fails a lot of the time. Like, how important is it? Like reliability, how much better will this get? And how soon will it get that much better? Like, is this a toy or is this really ready for like usage?
Do you feel like you lost ground by not doing anything? I mean, dude, the product velocity and everything is happening so fast. Was it that fast then?
Right.
Or were you able to just kind of sit back and watch and then take a smarter approach when you picked it back up?
A fantastic question. At the time, I don't know. I think like moving faster is almost never like a bad strategy as long as it's generally in the right direction. I do wish, like, God almighty, if we had really started a year sooner, I think there's no question that would have been beneficial. But we had a number of competitors who were extremely successful before ChatGPT launched. And I think their success, maybe I won't name names, but it's not hard to figure them out. They were growing like mad.
Oh, come on. You can't just start saying, I'm not going to name names and then not name names. I mean, that's
if you Google,
that's like saying, I'm not going to be mean. Oh, if I Google, okay.
I know, successful AI marketing and content marketing products 2022. Yeah. There were a couple that were doing exceptionally well, but they were doing exceptionally well, I thought, not because their product is really a breakthrough, but because they're one of the only products that are using OpenAI's language models. Meaning people aren't buying their product, they're buying GPT-3 underneath it. And once OpenAI, like if OpenAI just made like some sort of product that made it easier to access this, these companies are like toast. But what no one has built, was my opinion and still is a really deep, great writing experience where it's just like a top-notch product that's just like designed for the job of writing, with language models as a critical part of it, but they're not the whole story. And that was missing completely. And so my bet was like, okay, that's a deeper, harder product to build. We don't need to there's not like a land grab here. We just need to go really deep and start to work on this experience. And I think there's a market for it on the other side. And so we launched like after ChatGPT. We've only ever lived in a post-ChatGPT world. So we've always competed with them and grown, you know, despite that or whatever, or proven our thesis with more competition in the world. So a really simple way of putting it is life probably would have been, we would have grown hella fast if we had launched a year before ChatGPT launched. But I think we also would have had a moment of reckoning, which these companies did once there was just better products on the market. And so I'm kind of, in many ways, maybe I'm rationalizing it post hoc. I'm glad we didn't get the cheap high because we've had to compete with the best of the best and carve out a niche and a reason to exist in a world where ChatGPT exists. So that's, I think, like, that's the game I want to be playing anyways, not like trying to take advantage of the hype, because that's just like, it's a flaky way to live.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if anything, if you're focused on writers as your core audience, I mean, this is still a verticalized AI play. Is that how you view that? Or do you really view ChatGPT as a competitor?
I think you're right. Like, I have always viewed writing as a vertical, like just the workflow that like writers want, like just that problem space is more constrained than the more general tool like ChatGPT. So that's like step one. I completely agree. Like, that's how I've seen it, is like, that's a decision to go vertical in and of itself. Of course, within writing, there's many different categories. And I think the next decision point we'll eventually reach is, do we need to go even deeper into some segment? Like, people who are doing content writing for marketing purposes. Academia might have more specific needs. So like, it could go deeper, but for now, I think we're like, all right, what are the generally useful, like, what are the shared problems of writing? And can we build useful primitives that can be, applied across different types of writing, but still fit into this like long form writing use case? And I think, so you just like, you stay focused on that.
So I put in some words, some thoughts, and then what does it do next? Right. So like, I'd watched this post 18 months ago that was like, you can write a book on using ChatGPT. I put in some prompts. I did not think that was the case. I think there are things that it can do, but I do not think that it could. I don't think what it spit out was speaking even remotely close to my language. And I know people are like, well, you got to talk to it more. You got to whatever, how does type work? So if I, put in a paragraph, a description, what's it going to spit out to make me happy as a writer?
There's like two things there. The first is that I actually think the most valuable writing is often writing you do yourself initially, and then you use AI more for editing. So basically, that's one workflow that we've optimized for that I think is like better than any other product in the world. We have a great writing experience where you jot down that first shitty draft yourself, or at least your kind of spark notes, like in your words, in the sequence in which they came to you. And then we have these handy AI features where you can just highlight it, tap improve. You're shown suggested edits in line that you can individually accept or reject that you like or don't like. And it's like this really nice end-to-end editing workflow. So that's like one. ChatGPT they're building more capabilities here, and I think it'll probably get better, but it's not fundamentally designed as a scratch pad for your thoughts. It's more really an interface for like conversing with and directing the AI. Whereas we've just been like, we only care about writing. And so the AI should almost be secondary to that experience. But that said, there are definitely categories of writing where you want the AI to do the whole draft, or it's more mechanical in nature and the AI can actually do a pretty good job with kind of what we call one-shot writing. And in those cases, we've just built some capabilities where you can provide like a writing sample that illustrates the style or voice you're going after. Give it your little prompt that you would put into ChatGPT of like what you want it to write, and it will kind of mimic the writing sample you've given it in a way that feels a lot more true to you and true to that style. So we've done some stuff to try to get the first draft stuff good, but it's like, depending on what sort of writing you're doing, you either pick one of those two lanes.
You're YC backed with this?
Correct.
Talk about that process. I mean, that's acceptance rate's pretty low.
The only other company I know from that had a founder that's from the 757 is Seven Cups, Glenn Moriarty. I don't know if you ever. He's a beach guy.
Oh, cool. I don't think I know him.
Okay, he was probably 2013, 2014, but actually I haven't talked to him in a while. But
cool.
Yeah,
he's the only other person I can think of that was YC back from the area.
Nice. I'll have to maybe I've met him at an alumni event. But you're right; they have quite the stringent acceptance process, and they had actually funded a prior startup of mine that kind of like, whatever, maybe didn't go quite as far as I had hoped. So kind of like tail in hand, I went back to YC, applied with this new idea for Type, and said like, basically what I just told you guys, kind of that was basically the pitch. AI is going to change everything. There need to be better interfaces for specific problems. Writing has a huge area of opportunity. And what's fun about YC, it made me really respect them even more, is that they actually don't really give a shit if they've already funded you. They send you through the same process again with different partners that interview you, with the different interview process, with there's no favoritism. In fact, there's actually a lot of YC founders who have applied again for a new startup and not even been granted an interview because they didn't like the idea. Maybe they had cooled on the founder or something. So actually I went through the whole gauntlet, more or less from scratch. And like, I remember we kind of applied late with the idea for Type. We, YOLO'd in the application a little bit late. They just sent us through the ringer. The big question was some of what we just talked about. Like, how is this any different than like ChatGPT, or like what happens when, Google Docs adds AI features? Naturally, that's always been the big objection for us. And I just like, I think it was like 2 days before Christmas or something, I like sent them, I was like, here's the short answer over email. Like, I know you're hung up on this. The short answer is we're just going to go way deeper on writing. It's all we care about. Nobody cares about it as much as us. And we can take bigger bets than Google Docs can because we don't have 1 billion monthly actives we have to like bring along with us. And here's the long answer. And I sent them a fucking like 10-minute loom walking through what could be perceived as competitors and like really getting into the weeds of why the shape of their product was going to look different than ours and their focus was different. And like kind of held my breath and like whatever, 24 hours later got the call that they had
got to lose
us.
at this point.
Exactly. It was just a Hail Mary throw. So they they sent us through it, but eventually came around.
When did Sam Altman leave?
I think it was, I know I'm going to screw up the timing, but I want to say it was like 2019, 2020 ish, but he had been doing OpenAI on the side kind of prior to that, like part-timing it basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had been Jeff Ralston before Jerry, and then Jerry for this latest bat, the last 2 or 3 years.
Are you a big writer?
Well, the irony, of course, is that I've gotten so busy building a writing product to solve my writing problems that I have not actually written on my Substack in like months. So that irony is not lost on me. But yes, otherwise I did publish quite regularly over the last few years, just on my blog.
What, gosh, I have so many questions just about YC in general, or don't even know where to go. What, like going into YC, is it expected that you can like demo day kind of aspect, that you come to the deal, or you come to the table already with a certain amount of money already penciled in from a capital raise standpoint? Or does it work the other way, that you leverage YC to attract additional investment?
This is something that they've actually kind of shifted, I think, their own advice and messaging on over time. It's kind of evolved. Originally, of course, the idea behind Demo Day, and for the listeners who kind of don't know the YC accelerator model, and this is a model that other accelerators also use something similar. You kind of join this program, and for 3 months, you're basically sprinting towards the grand reveal, which is called Demo Day, where you're going to take your startup, show it to a big group of investors, a big audience of investors, and like have your shot at raising a seed round, make your big splashy kind of launch into the world. And you spend those 3 months leading up to it, basically getting your shit together. If you need to build a product and that's what you're going to demo, you're doing that. If it's just about like, we need to find our first few customers in the next 3 months, you're doing that. You're focusing on like your next bottleneck, so that by the time you're kind of presented to the world, you have a story to tell and some proof that this thing could work. And that's really different based on your context and where you are as a company, but it's usually something to do with you're either launching the first version of your product or you're getting your first bit of traction. Traditionally, the idea was, of course, your fundraising then starts at demo day, really,
Right.
and the month or two after. But I think, like, first of all, savvy founders have picked up on the fact that, like, well, wait a minute, demo day is kind of a point of leverage that I can use as a chip before, and tell investors, hey, we're raising this now. We're about to go talk to a bunch of investors in a month from now. Like, you better get in. And YC, I think, smartly, like, and understandably discouraged founders from doing that, just because fundraising is such a time suck that, like, hey, if you spend 1/3 of our program like just talking to investors, you're not talking to customers. But there's enough kind of momentum around YC now to where you just get a lot of inbound during the program from investors, that what we did and what a lot of our peers did was we actually started the fundraise maybe 4 weeks before demo day and had most of it closed by that date.
During the application,
we raised like 2.7 million in a seed round from like a number of funds and angels. So, and we set out to raise like 1.5. So it ended up being like, we were able to oversubscribe it, which was great.
And then in terms of like right now, do you just buckle down on spending? Have you raised again, or you just, have you raised since then?
No, we've been like pretty, conservative in that there's obviously a lot of other AI companies that just have been super aggressive about whatever, scaling, hiring, et cetera. We're taking a bit more of the approach of like, let's get the physics of the business right and like make sure revenue is outpacing headcount growth. So we've got plenty of runway still, and that raise happened, I guess, over a year ago now.
Yeah, different era than a few years ago. What during the application process, were they focused more on you being able to go deep to solve the problem, or were they looking for initial traction in terms of users?
Yes. One thing that YC like still I don't think gets enough credit for is like their willingness to bet on people and not care about this current state of things, insofar that like it's still just an idea. And they literally will take folks who don't even yet have an idea, which is really actually wild to think about. And so they actually don't get too hung up just because they think the person has a ton of potential. And one thing they told to us during the process this time around that has stuck with me, it's kind of like a passing comment someone made, but they're like, the acceptance rate of YC is like incredibly low, but harder to get into than Harvard or whatever. But like, actually, if you're like a co-founding team of like 2 reasonably competent people, maybe one of you is a great software engineer, maybe the other has some real potential in business, you both could get pretty good jobs elsewhere, but like you really want to do a startup, that's actually like much rarer than you think. And just that already, I think, catapults you into the top 10% of applicants. Like, you're just a pretty solid founding team. Because I think you just get, it's like, 20,000 people apply to each batch or something. But, you guys have seen it. You get a lot of noise in those applications. And it's a lot of people who, maybe I'll do a startup. But if you have 2-3 folks who are like, we really want to do a company, we really know this space, we're competent, like that's rarer than I think. We forget how rare that is if you're in the startup world.
What, how many do they accept a year now? It's increased over time.
It definitely has. I think they just in the last like 12 months or so have shifted to actually going from 2 bigger batches per year, which had anywhere from like, I think 200 to like, I think at maybe the peak, like 400 companies. They scaled back a bit.
Yeah, that's right.
In each batch. Now they're doing 4 batches a year, I think around 100 companies each. So they're like, which makes a ton of sense to me. They get a little bit more one-on-one time with all the partners. Like, it's a little bit more of a steady kind of process for them. But that's they've kind of like, they've been right sizing at the batch size over the last couple of years.
Oh, and I would think that the difference between company 1 and company 100 and company 101 to company 200, the difference between those is super, super small. I mean, like if you're 101, the first one out, like you can still operate at a superior level.
Oh, totally.
I would think. Yeah.
Yeah. I've actually been, first of all, I got rejected like the first time I applied to YC, for anyone who has been disheartened by their own experience with accelerators. And I had an amazing co-founder at the time. It was like years ago. And yeah, was promptly given the rejection note, but was invited to interview, and that was great. And like, I think if you apply and they take the time to like, even like interview you maybe, but then you don't get invited to the batch, you are in a special club, whether you know it or not. You don't feel like it because you got the rejection, but like, that's a pretty big deal. And they'll encourage you to apply again. And they really mean it. Cause like I said, I got rejected. I think it was like 12 months later, one of the partners like called me, which is I had not kept in touch whatsoever. And it was just like, hey, what are you up to these days? Are you still working on that thing you were working on? Like, you should apply to like another batch. So I think like folks can really take heart in the fact you have more shots on goal than maybe you realize. And if you just get into an orbit of some of these folks, they'll, you're in a special club and they want to see you succeed.
Interesting. What, and then afterwards, like how does the communication work once you're done? Is that, I would hope that the alumni status and the network itself would be super, super strong. Is that the case?
I think the kind of the formal, of course, programming from YC drops to basically a once a year reunion and some other events that kind of pop up. So you're kind of like on your own after the batch, if you will, quote unquote. But a couple things. One, they encourage you on a less often kind of on a lower cadence, like once every 6 months, once a quarter, to you have full access to still do office hours and schedule time with your partners, really with any partner. So you can still get some of the great mentorship you got during the batch, just at a slower cadence. So we took advantage of that recently, and it was like super useful. Mm-hmm. The events they do host, there's a big kind of alumni thing, is very tightly facilitated, and there's like excellent people there, and you get this great collision of your peers. But the real thing that you end up walking away with are definitely your connections with the other founders in your batch. And it might just be a small number. Like I've stayed very close with like 3 other founders from my batch. And that's just like, you're chatting every week, you're solving each other's problems. You have very similar problems.
Yeah.
You're like, that's the ongoing benefit.
Any notable companies surfacing from your batch?
That's a great, they said this before and it's so true. They're like, you think you know who's going to be the big winner while you're in the program. There's that one company every weekly office hour, they're just growing like hot mad or whatever. But like, believe me, you don't know. You have no fucking idea. Like, let the clock run for 5 years, 10 years. You'll be shocked at like who the big ones become. So they drilled that in pretty hard. And I do feel like it's still too early to tell. There was no huge names from our batch. There were a few companies that are doing well, but no, I think the clock is very much still running.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Yeah. I mean, timing is everything, and you just never know when the product market fit hits, and then you just go. You just got to grind.
Oh, 1000%.
Man, what one thing I noticed going to your site is it's such a similar appearance as Typeform. Was that like by design, or is that just pure coincidence?
That's actually hilarious.
Almost like the same font. Like, I mean, like to me, like it just was interesting.
It's actually hilarious. This is so fun. I'm on the Typeform website right now for the first time. Maybe not ever. I've used Typeform. That's pretty hilarious. I definitely see some similarities. No, that was not at all deliberate, even though that's quite comical because the names are similar already.
Yeah. I mean, because sometimes people would, rightfully so, do it purposely.
Well, there's definitely some, when we were doing the landing page, like there's definitely some themes you see as you look at a bunch of products you really like, and like, how do they position themselves? Where do they put like their social proof? Like, for example, I've noticed that just so many companies now, sensibly, you put your big logos just below the fold. So it's like the second thing people see, for us, we like wanted to showcase the product more. So the product is really prominent, but we got some inspiration from other similar product oriented companies. But you do end up with like, okay, there's like 4 or 5 ideas that almost everyone does in some form. So you definitely end up being like, okay, this is kind of why a lot of things feel similar. There are best practices that get agreed upon.
What was there? I'm thinking the answer is no. Was there any companies in your batch that was a single founder, or did everybody have a I think having a co-founder is a requirement now at YC. No,
they push it super hard. I'm gonna totally blank on if there were any in the batch that were solo founders. They've absolutely backed solo founder companies, but they strongly encourage co-founders. Yeah. Literally, if there was one piece of YC like wisdom that I kind of like have a slightly different take on, it's that piece of advice, because I think it is true. It's almost like marriage or being in a relationship or something. It's like the best situation is you have a great relationship. But the second best, or like the second worst situation, is not being alone. It's actually like being in a bad partnership. All right, I'm flipping these orders. Sorry. The next best situation is actually being alone. Worse than that is being in a not great partnership. And then, I don't know, it's below that. So like co-founder conflict is both one of the largest sources of startups failing. But it's also like, so that's like somewhat contradictory to this like pressure to have a co-founder. I think people can go at it alone, but
how long did it take for you to get a co-founder, and how did you select? What were you looking for to select your co-founder?
This was honest to God, just like pure dumb luck and happenstance. It kind of blows my mind to think about, but I was working in New York out of a shared kind of workspace here. At the time, working on a different project, a different startup, and just happened to get sat next to this guy who I just became buddies with over kind of just naturally. And we're just chit-chatting. He was doing his own thing at the time. And he had been a software engineer, kind of career software engineer. He was at Instagram before breaking out to kind of try his own thing. I had been, in a prior life, software engineer, self-taught, but I was actually more thinking now about like growth, marketing, and building that skill set. And we just like became friends over the course of, I don't know, many months or something. And like, there came a time at which he was like, hey, I'm kind of at a crossroads with like my startup, not quite sure what I want to do next. If you ever have an idea for something, maybe we should consider going at it together. And I actually at the time did not yet have kind of some of the theses for Type figured out. So I told him, man, I would love to do something with you. I just don't quite have the idea yet. But lo and behold, 2 months later, I did. And I kind of came back to him and was like, all right, man, here's the pitch. AI document editor, GPT-3. These things should like be merged. And more dumb luck. The product he had been working on actually had a pretty heavy, like product-wise, actually had a lot of functionality we would need to build for this new product. He had built kind of like a learning app that had a lot of like text editing capabilities. And so we just, as we thought about it more and more, we're like, damn, this is like an extremely good complementary. We have very good complementary skill sets here. I know the space really well and the problem and I think how to bring it to market. He really knew the technology. He had literally built something at least tangential enough to where he could fork the code base and start using it. And then doing a full callback to the beginning of the episode, we were like, all right, we're definitely doing this. We need a name. And so like one night I'm doing some like, 1 a.m. GoDaddy search, like, writing.com, premium domain, $10 million. I'm like, okay, fuck. Writing.co, 1 million. Oh, Jesus Christ. I eventually land on like Type.ai. And of course it has the big scary premium thing. It's like inquire about pricing. I'm like, fuck it. I do it. It's like, it's 5 figures, not 6 or whatever, but I can't shell out, I'm not going to write that check. But I bring it to him the next day and I'm like,
so like 10 grand or like 90 grand?
Like, somewhere in between,
how in between?
Like,
because
directly in between.
Okay.
Not tough to get numbers out of me. So I take it to him and I'm like, all right, the good news is
it's a good domain. That's why I asked.
No, totally. Oh, I know. Our joke, but it's kind of not a joke, is like the biggest asset on our balance sheet is like the domain, because post ChatGPT, I think the thing would sell for a lot more. There's a lot more heat, but I just like, good news, I found our name, I think. Tell me if you like it. Bad news is it's a shit ton of money and we have no money. And he was like, actually, he had raised a little bit of money from a single angel for his startup. And he's like, let's just basically burn that money on this domain.
All in.
And we made a blood oath, went all in. Thus Type was born.
I think you could resell that now for a substantial amount more than that too. So I think there's value in that. I think Noah Kagan, I think is his name. He bought sumo.com and it was several million or something like that. And he'd been trying to get that forever. Like the domain game is wild. Like it's
wild.
Nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts. I know. There's some people quietly making a lot of money just flipping these things.
And I've let some domains. So like I let Start Norfolk go because like this event that I used to do, like I build a company in a weekend competition. I let that domain go. No, they want like $500 or $7,500 for it. I'm like, I bought that shit for $13. I'm not giving you that.
I know.
Like, what are we doing?
Totally.
Like, shouldn't have let it go, I guess. But like,
no, completely. It's so annoying. But these squatters.
You ever think about moving back?
Yes and no. Like the only reason I say no is because we have we work in person in New York. So like the team is here. There could always be, I love Virginia Beach and I love where I grew up. And like,
well, it's tacky.
There's always a word. Yeah. No. These freaking, those companies are tacky. The t-shirts are tacky. They're disgracing my beautiful hometown. So yeah, there would just be other considerations with like, what do we do? Do we need to change the whole team structure? We're a remote company now. So that's,
how often do you make it back?
I'll actually, what often happens, my wife's family is from Wilmington, North Carolina, which is wild. It's like mini Virginia Beach. They're so similar. And we end up spending a good amount of time going to North Carolina, and we'll often on our kind of way down route through Virginia Beach. So I'm down there. I mean, maybe once a quarter, if not a little bit more. And New York, now that I'm in New York, it's a really quick flight, direct flight to get down there. So it's been nice to be back and close because I can get down there way easier.
We'll have to get together next time you're in town.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be a blast.
Any final words?
Yes, I do have final words. Go make the most reckless financial decision. If you're a founder and your investors are telling you, hey, shouldn't you build a product before you buy a domain name for all the money you have at the bank? Tell them, fuck no, we're going to buy this domain. That's the key to success. Don't do that.
At the end of the day, well, I agree with Zach. A 4-letter domain name, .ai is hot right now. I mean, that's
totally. Maybe that's the one exception.
Yeah. You might not have anything else to sell.
Yeah, I think you can get a stupid domain, right? But this is like a common word. Like, yeah.
No, totally. I do think we got lucky on this one for sure. But I did feel hilariously stupid. Like if I heard a founder friend of mine. I can't remember if the price was public, but it was, I think I maybe got a hold of it. Was like $1 million or something crazy.
Is it a squatter?
I'm pretty sure. Actually, I forgot if it's live actually. Might be mixing it with some other ones we looked at. I think it was like being held hostage. Yeah. Yeah, it was some insane price. So it's like .ai it is.
Works. Stu, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. Go back to memory lane a little bit. Had no idea. Continued success and looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah. Small world. Is really a pleasure.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks so much, Stu.
Awesome. See you guys.